I inherited a cabin in the Rockies. 7 bone-chilling rules that haunt me forever. When Ben first laid eyes on the cabin nestled deep within the Rockies, he felt an icy grip around his spine. The place was like something out of a nightmare, shingles peeling, windows cracked, and a shadow that seemed to dart from bush to tree like it was alive. Fog rolled in thick, swallowing the surrounding landscape, making the cabin appear and disappear like a specter. His heart raced. There was something eerie about it all. A chill brushed against his skin, whispering secrets he didn't want to hear. What had he gotten himself into? His grandfather had left this to him, a seemingly harmless inheritance. Everyone said he was crazy to even think about stepping inside. Yet, curiosity tugged at him, drawing him closer. They whispered about the strange symbols carved into the doorframe, symbols that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. It was said that those who dared to ignore the cabin's unsettling rules never returned the same. The locals had their stories, tales of the wild and restless spirits that haunted these woods. They said a banshee-like wail could be heard if you were unlucky enough to wander off the path. The woods felt alive, and Ben's instinct screamed at him to be cautious as he stepped over the threshold. The air felt charged, heavy with shadows and unspoken fear. The wooden floorboards creaked as if they had a voice of their own, warning him to turn back. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light and clung to the murky outlines of faded photographs lining the walls. Faces he didn't recognize stared back at him, eyes hollow, gaze penetrating. Cold pricked his skin, and he shivered. A sudden urge to bolt gripped him. He felt the weight of something watching from the depths of the dark corners. Waiting before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Ben swallowed hard, adjusting his gaze to the dimly lit interior. As he lingered in the room, he noticed an old, dusty book resting on a table, its cover cracked with age. It beckoned him closer. He reached out, feeling a strange heat radiating from its pages. What secrets lay within? The first rule caught his eye. Never utter a wish under the moonlight. The text seemed to shimmer, sending shivers coursing through him. What kind of nightmare was this? His mind raced. What had his grandfather done in this cabin? Beneath the surface, a slow dread began to swell, gnawing at his subconscious. Ben was no superstitious man, but something about the atmosphere felt loaded with portent. A soft knock echoed from the back room, jerking him from his thought. His pulse quickened, echoing in his ears. Was someone else there? Had he missed something lurking in the shadows? He strained to listen, heart thundering in his chest. Silence suddenly blanketed the space, a silence so thick it almost felt tangible. The hairs on his arms stood on end. An undeniable feeling, or was it a warning? He knew he should leave, yet he stepped further inside, drawn deeper into the enigmatic rules that awaited him. What other horrors were etched into this forgotten place? And as shadows danced around him, Ben felt the cabin come alive with whispers that would haunt him forever. The air turned colder with each step he took. Ben squinted into the dark, trying to pinpoint the source of the soft knock. Then, just beyond his peripheral vision, a flicker caught his attention. Was it movement in the shadows? He held his breath, feeling as if the world outside had slipped away. The cabin loomed around him, walls curving in like hands ready to close him in. "Hello?" Ben called out, his voice shaky. It felt foolish to speak, yet silence felt heavier than a weight pressing on his chest. He took another cautious step, and the floor creaked beneath him, warning him in a tone almost akin to a whisper. Inside him, dread twisted tighter. Then came another knock, sharper this time, resonating through the walls and sending a shiver racing down his spine. It had to be real, had to be something more than just his imagination running wild. Maybe it was merely a trapped animal, or worse, something that belonged here, lingering in wait. He steeled his resolve, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and fear. Rounding the corner to the back room, he fought against the instinct to turn back, to flee. But curiosity and perhaps a flicker of recklessness compelled him. The darkness here was thicker, brushing against his skin like phantom fingers as he reached for the door. His hand hovered, hesitating. What if there truly was something in there? What if he stumbled onto another one of those unsettling secrets? Suddenly, the door creaked open into a room shrouded in dark, disheveled furniture and cobwebbed corners. Eyes darted around, and there, in the flickering light of a dusty oil lamp on an old desk, he saw it. A small, weathered box, intricately carved with the same strange symbols from the doorframe. Ben's heart raced as he stepped inside, crossing the threshold. The air crackled with energy, and an overwhelming urge to see what lay within wrestled with his instincts to back away. He approached the box, lifting its lid hesitantly. Inside, an array of peculiar objects shimmered: a glass pendant, a tarnished key, and a brittle yellowed scroll. The scroll looked ancient, as if it withheld secrets long buried. Before he could process what was happening, the light from the lamp flickered violently, plunging the room into sudden darkness. His breath quickened. The air felt thick and electric. Had he disturbed something? A wave of panic washed over him, grounding him in place. He grasped at the items, feeling the smoothness of the pendant beneath his fingers, instinctively drawn to its warmth. Then, like a distant storm rumbling to life, a low chant began to echo through the cabin, an otherworldly sound that made his skin crawl. It rose and fell, wrapping around him like tendrils of smoke. He could hear whispers merging with the chant, different voices layering on top of one another, desperate and urgent. A realization hit him. The rules his grandfather had laid out weren't mere warnings, they were a map. Each item held meaning. Each whispered word was a beckoning, a belonging. He felt the walls shift, as if they conspired along with the shadows to tighten their hold. Clutching the scroll, Ben's resolve firmed. He needed to understand. What had his family become tangled in? Forced to confront his fears, he initiated the haunting incantation that dripped from his mind like a slow poison. Just as he spoke the words, the air crackled violently, and the floor shook beneath him. Shadows elongated, swirling, enveloping him in a tempest of darkness. Something ancient stirred in response, something that had been waiting, and it wasn't just the cabin that held its secrets. Suddenly, there was silence. Ben opened his mouth to cry out, but the words caught in his throat as he felt the weight of a presence looming. This wasn't merely a story of inheritance anymore. He had summoned something that might ruin him. Now, it was neither a cabin nor simply an eerie inheritance, it was a connection to forces beyond comprehension, ready to consume him whole. And in the heart of it, he waited, shivering as footsteps echoed at the threshold behind him, slowly approaching. But who or what awaited him through that encroaching darkness? The footsteps paused just beyond the threshold. A heartbeat of stillness hung in the air. Ben felt the darkness breathe around him, thick and suffocating, like a living thing. He swallowed hard, his throat dry, as dread gripped him tighter. Every instinct screamed at him to bolt for the door, but his feet felt glued to the floor. "Who's there?" His voice came out barely above a whisper, trembling. The shadows flickered, then shifted, as if responding to his fear. In that moment of vulnerability, he felt exposed, a target for whatever lay hidden in the dark. The air turned colder still, and with it came the smell of damp earth and something else, something sharp, like the sting of metal. His heart raced as he stood there, heart pounding against his ribs, a drum echoing in the silence as he wished for the comforting weight of daylight. Then, from the depths of that impenetrable blackness, a figure began to emerge. Ben's breath caught. It was indistinct, a silhouette, but he could feel its gaze pinning him in place. Something about it hungry and unsettling. Was it a trick of the shadows? Or had he truly summoned something dreadful? Suddenly, the figure stepped into the flickering light of the lamp, and Ben felt the blood drain from his face. It was a woman, but her features twisted with an uncanny familiarity and yet a darkness that chilled him to the bone. Her eyes were sunken, pools of void that pierced through him. There was no warmth, only an unyielding chill that seemed to sap the very spirit from the room. "Help me?" she rasped. But the words seemed to echo, layered with countless other voices, rising in desperation. He staggered backwards, mind racing. This wasn't a stranger, this was a ghostly fragment of his past. A figure that held his grandfather's anguish in her skeletal hands. His grandfather had always spoken of shadows, of debts unpaid. Was she one of them? An echo of a family secret bound to the cabin like a ball and chain? Struggling to breathe, Ben fumbled with the scroll still clutched in his grasp. The incantation he had spoken felt like a naive mistake now, feeding into something far larger than he could comprehend. "Look at me," she pleaded, though her voice twisted like smoke, curling at the edges as though trying to escape the room and the weight of the dark. A flicker of imbued strength surged through him. His grandfather had taught him that darkness relied on fear. Perhaps fear was the only thing holding this entity in place. With a surge of defiance, Ben straightened. "What do you want from me?" he demanded, his voice stronger than he felt. There was a shifting in the air, a palpable tension as if the cabin itself were listening. The woman's hollow gaze deepened, a glimmer of recognition breaking through the despair. "You have the key," she murmured. "Key?" His mind raced. The tarnished key. It had felt significant, its cold surface alive against his palm. What door awaited the key? What further secrets rested behind it? Just then, silence fell once more, and she began to dissolve, disappearing back into the shadows. "You must find it before it finds you," she echoed, her voice now a fading whisper that sent shivers racing down Ben's spine. He stood there, heart racing, realization dawning. He had to take action. The hunger of the cabin was far from sated. His blood pulsed with the urgency to find that key and uncover what it unlocked. But as shadows settled once again, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had awakened something else, something still imprisoned and more dangerous than he could ever imagine. Ben glanced towards the doorway, now utterly dark. He couldn't ignore the haunting echo of the woman's words. Time was running out, but would he be able to confront whatever was lurking behind the darkness? With iron resolve he stepped forward. His breath came quicker, his heartbeat soaring, as he gripped the pendant tightly. There were mysteries yet to uncover, and he was determined to reveal the secrets hidden away in that cabin. Yet deep inside him, a new fear blossomed. Would he lose himself in the process? As he crossed back towards the main room, the shadows around him pulsed with life, waiting. What would he find behind the door of his own legacy? The air thickened with a palpable sense of dread, and just then, another knock sounded, this time, louder and more menacing, shaking him to his core. Who was it that had come to claim him next? Ben froze, the sound echoing through the cabin like thunder rolling across the sky. His heart pounded, every instinct urging him to run. But where could he go? The walls felt alive, closing in, and the door was the only way out. "Who's there?" he called, his voice cracking like dry twigs underfoot. Silence swamped the room, but Ben could feel its weight pressing down on him. The air was suffused with tension, thick enough to cut. Another knock reverberated, louder this time, and it brought with it a chill that wrapped around him like a serpent coiling tighter. "Please, just leave me alone." Panic surged forth, taking over his senses. He darted toward the door but stopped short. What if it was worse out there than in here? He turned back to the darkened corners of the room. The lamp flickered, casting distorted shadows that danced across the walls, and in his adrenaline-fueled state, he feared they might come alive. Desperate to make sense of it all, he gripped the tarnished key again. "What do you want?" he shouted into the darkness, his voice gaining a thread of strength. "What do I need to unlock?" The room remained still, but in that stillness, he heard something, a low whisper threading through the silence, tugging at the edges of his sanity. "Help me!" The mournful echo of the woman's voice poured into his mind like poison. He shook his head, trying to dispel the thought. Couldn't be her, could it? He took a step toward the door, dread anchoring him to the spot. "Show yourself," he challenged, each syllable cutting through the oppressive darkness. Sudden silence engulfed him, almost suffocating. And then, as if responding to his audacity, shadows gathered in the corner of the room, swirling like smoke. A shape began to take form, a man this time, emerging from the mists, his eyes glowing with an ominous red that sent shivers crawling up Ben's spine. "You're just like him," he hissed, the words slithering through the air like venomous snakes. "Who?" Ben demanded, fighting back the wave of panic threatening to overwhelm him. The apparition stepped into the flickering light just enough for Ben to see the faint outline of familiar features: his grandfather. Recognition struck like lightning, but the man's face was twisted, marred with anguish and rage. "Foolish boy," the figure thundered, his voice a grotesque parody of authority. "You have no idea what you've awakened." The air turned heavy, pulsating with suppressed fury. Ben struggled to catch his breath, feeling as if the very walls were inching closer with every beat of his heart. "What do you want from me?" He felt small and helpless against the specter of the past. "Only your submission," the apparition spat, his form flickering like a dying flame. "This cabin holds our family's debt, and it is now yours to pay." Ben's mind raced, the weight of the truth crashing over him. This wasn't just about ghosts, it was about legacy. A curse binding him to secrets never meant to be unveiled. "What do you mean? How can I pay it?" "For generations," the specter growled, "we have borne this stain. You can only end the cycle by confronting what hides beyond the door." The implications twisted in his gut like a knife. Did his grandfather hold the key to an even darker truth? And what awaited him outside? Before he could gather his scattered thoughts, the echoes of his grandfather's voice faded, leaving behind a haunting silence. With a trembling hand, Ben reached for the doorknob, heart racing, feeling the pulse of anticipation in the air. He pressed his ear to the door. Another knock reverberated, louder and sharper than before, this time accompanied by a low growl beneath it, like a warning. What lay beyond? With every fiber of his being, he knew he had to open it. But at what cost? In that moment he realized something terrifying. The bond of legacy was strong, but so was the curse of curiosity. The door creaked open, and a gust of icy wind surged in, carrying with it whispers of long-buried secrets. Ben braced himself as he stepped into the unknown, heart pounding with the thrill and dread of what awaited him next. He breathed deep, preparing for the darkness that threatened to claim him. The moment Ben stepped through the door, he was hit by a wave of frigid air that clawed at his skin. The darkness outside wrapped around him like an icy shroud, smothering his senses and pulling him into an abyss. For a brief heartbeat, he teetered on the edge of one reality versus the other, inside the stifling cabin or outside the gnawing void. He squinted into the blackness, the air buzzing with an eerie stillness. A heavy fog rolled in, mingling with shadows that seemed to sway like the branches of a gnarled oak. The landscape before him was unrecognizable, warped as if the laws of nature had been twisted by unseen forces. "Is anyone there?" he called out, his voice trembling. He glanced back at the now ajar door, its faint light a beacon of safety. But something compelled him to move forward. Perhaps it was the legacy his grandfather had raged about, a burden waiting to be unshackled. The grass felt wet and spongy beneath his feet, sucking him into the earth with every hesitant step. And then he heard it. A low, growling sound, almost like a warning but laced with something darker, a promise of pain. It echoed from the depths of the fog, a hunger waiting to be sated. "Hello?" he called again, his voice barely above a whisper. The growl deepened, morphing into a rumble that vibrated through his chest and made his skin prickle. Ben's heart raced as he forced himself to peer deeper into the shadows that obscured his vision. Was it a trick of the mind, or were forms shifting behind the veil? His breath quickened, and a knot of dread twisted in his gut. Out of the mist, a shape emerged, long and low to the ground. It moved fluidly, like a shadow that had come to life. A creature, he realized, both terrifying and fascinating. Its eyes burned fiercely in the dark, glowing like dying embers. The raw intensity pinned him where he stood, frozen, unable to scream or run. With a guttural snarl, it darted forward. Ben stumbled back, fear tightening around him like a vice. He looked left, then right, searching for any escape. But there was only the approaching creature and the darkness pressing in from every side. "Please, I don't mean any harm." He cringed, his voice quivering as the beast closed the distance between them. It was massive, the size of a wolf but with a hunched body that resembled a twisted human form. The stench of decay wafted toward him, making him gag. Then, in a flash, the creature halted just inches from him. It sniffed the air, its breath hot and rancid. Just when Ben thought it might lunge, it paused, snarling softly as if recognizing something in him. The whispers began again, cascading through the air. Are you ready?" They crackled like static with each shuddering breath the creature took. "Ready? Ready for what?" Panic sparked in his chest, and he strained to hear through the static of fear. "You have come to pay the debt?" it growled, the voice somehow reverberating within Ben's own thoughts. "You must choose. Life or legacy. What will it be?" Time seemed to stretch, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could feel his grandfather's words echoing within confront what hides beyond the door. But what was beyond this creature, beyond this fog? His fingers trembled as he weighed his options. Life or legacy? A choice, one that could change everything. As he opened his mouth to respond, a thunderous growl erupted from behind him, shaking the very ground beneath his feet. The door slammed shut, sealing him in, the growling now morphing into a cacophony of whispers and breaths, an audience born from shadows, waiting for his answer. What had he unleashed? Ben's heart raced as he faced the beast. No choice but to confront the haunting truth of his family's past as shadows swayed, whispering secrets he could barely comprehend. Could he bear the cost of his heritage? Or would it consume him alive? The growl rumbled again, a low tremor reverberating through Ben's bones. Every part of him screamed to flee, yet the presence before him held him captive as if the very fog had coiled around his legs, rooting him to the spot. Each second felt like an eternity as his mind raced. Life or legacy? What did it even mean? The creature's glowing eyes bored into his soul. It shifted, muscles rippling under ragged fur, and in that moment, Ben saw the flicker of something resembling understanding within those depths. Was it possible that this beast wasn't just a monstrosity, but a guardian and a harbinger of truths yet to be exposed? "Choose," the creature commanded, its voice now a mixture of growl and plea, fierce and desperate. Ben's chest tightened as the weight of decisions pressed down harder. The whispers crescendoed around him, weaving through the thick fog, curling over him like an insistent shroud. He felt the chill seep deeper, fostering a panic that throbbed like a raw nerve. Memories of whispered stories from his childhood filled his mind, his grandfather's fervent warnings about the past, the sacrifices made, the cost of ignorance. Could he unearth those long-buried truths without losing himself in the process? He finally found his voice, trembling and small. "What do you want from me?" The creature's skin rippled as it advanced, snapping Ben's thoughts back to the present. "Your family has been here, tethered. You must decide if you will carry the weight of their sins or if you will sever the bond." The creature paused, sharp breaths echoing in the heavy air. "This is not mere choice. It is your destiny." As the words sank in, Ben's heart raced with realization. To turn his back now would mean abandoning everything the legacy forgotten and drowned in time. But to accept could thrust him into the abyss where truth and horror lay intertwined. Callous of the past entwined with the fog, forming gloomy specters that whispered dreadfully familiar tales. Each echo forged a connection to the sacrifices made long before he arrived, anchored in blood and shadow. He could no longer ignore the call of responsibility. "What's the price?" he whispered, the bile rising in his throat. "Pain, anguish," the creature replied, each syllable drenched in promise and threat. "It demands a part of you. What you hold dear may be taken." A sharp intake of breath pierced the weighty silence. Ben could visualize the faces of those he loved. The years of laughter and joy they shared. Would he risk it all? The surroundings became increasingly oppressive, his environment shutting down like a relentless vice. Choose now, the beast warned, its eyes brightening, reflecting a predatory intensity. Ben stood at the edge of an unseen precipice, mind racing as memories clashed and melded with the growing shadows that whispered beneath the surface. He was fighting against the gale, grasping at tendrils of legacy, memories of screams and those lost, his heart pounding like thunder. But before he could muster a response, another noise ruptured the silence from behind, the sound skittering across the ground, a noise like nails against wood. Then, like a sudden storm, darkness swelled, and figures began to emerge from the fog. More shadows, more whispers. Ben strained to see the shapes taking form. Fear clawed at him, tightening its grip as the edges of the reality he knew began to fray. Ben, a voice pierced through, familiar yet soaked in despair. It was his mother's voice, but warped, anguished. You must decide before it's too late. Time was running out, and as more figures joined the lurking shadows, he realized this was no mere choice but a reckoning, a confrontation too deep to retreat from now. His heart thundered as the weight of every moment pressed down on him. Ben's breath caught in his throat, the urge to scream fighting to escape. Would he allow the legacy to seep into his veins or dare to flee from its clutches? Make your choice. The echoes of voices collided, creating a cacophony of past and future that threatened to drown him. And in the eye of a growing storm he stood, on the precipice, waiting, gasping, unprepared for what awaited him on the other side. Would he dare to confront the truth of his family's past, or would he be swallowed whole by the shadows? As he opened his mouth, another growl reverberated through the air, shaking the fog around him, intensifying the dread as the figures shifted closer. Who were they? What did they want? And just as he thought it impossible to find his voice amidst the chaos, something deep within him whispered back one final question. What if I don't want either? The fog writhed in agitation, thickening like a physical presence, and the silhouettes hovered with anticipation. The growl of the creature echoed in Ben's ears, simmering with danger and distorted promise. He could feel its power, pressing against him as if each heartbeat summoned more shadows to the scene. The air tingled, electric with inevitability. Make your choice. The beast's voice dropped to a whisper, a chilling caress that felt both primal and alluring. Behind him, the mournful echoes of his mother's voice tangled with the harsh breaths of the creature, creating a dissonance that sent shivers down his spine. Mom? Ben's voice cracked, the words slithering out, heavy with confusion and dread. Desperation clawed at his throat. He turned, searching the faces emerging from the fog, faces that morphed and shifted, teasing recognition but fleeing clarity. They were his ancestors, trapped in torment, eyes pleading and haunted. It's too late, they whispered in unison, their voices rising like a rising tide, threatening to pull him down into the abyss of secrets. Choose. But what did that really mean? If he didn't want either path, would the shadows consume him? He fought to purge the thoughts devouring his resolve. Pain lashed through him like a whip, and Ben staggered back a step, heart racing. What if I refuse? He shouted, boldness mingling with fear. In response, the growl transformed into a guttural laugh, rippling over the gathering darkness. The creature's glowing eyes flared, illuminating the figures behind him, each face now full of despair and loss. Their anguish bore down on him, pressing, tightening around his chest like a vice. Refusal is a choice, too, the beast growled, and sometimes it can have far greater consequences. A surge of wind swept through the clearing, carrying the scent of earth and decay, and it dawned on him the fog wasn't merely obscuring. It harbored everything he feared, everything he had long buried. What lay beneath it? Would risks lead to revelations or ruin? Ben. A voice, raw with urgency, broke through. It was Sarah, his sister, distant but close enough that he could feel her presence. You don't have to do this alone. We can face this together. There was a flicker of hope woven in her words, piercing through the thick gloom that enveloped him. For a moment, his heart leaped, yearning for the strength they had shared as children against the things that crept in the night. "Sarah, where are you?" he called out, seeking her through the haze that now felt like a living entity. "Stay where you are," she urged, her voice cracking over a wave of sound, desperate and confined. "Do not let it take you." The growl morphed once more, becoming insistent and demanding. "The bonds of your family are both chains and shields. You can choose to break or bear them. The choice defines your fate." Ben trembled, torn between the weight of ancestry and the thread of newfound courage. As shadows lunged nearer, he felt an overwhelming heat rushing through him, fear clashing with defiance. "I refuse to inherit fear," he shouted into the chaos. Instantly, the fog shrieked in reply, swirls of mist roiling violently. The shadows recoiled, but Ben's heart hammered against his ribs, echoing the pulse of his family's past and now. Unsettling truths bubbled to the surface. "What do you fear, Ben?" The creature growled low, eyes glimmering with a foreboding light. "What does it mean for you to relinquish the legacy?" Then, just as the shadows began to dissolve, a flash of memory, a hidden room in the cabin, secrets buried beneath floorboards, whispers of something dark and sacrificial, something he didn't fully understand yet. His mind raced, threading together pieces of a puzzle he never wanted to solve as the shadows blackened, diverging and revealing dark paths ahead. He sensed a harrowing shift in the air. Everything around him crackled with anticipation, demanding answers. Something vital was at stake, and it wasn't just his life. "Make your choice," the creature rumbled, and the fog slowly began to part. A wall of tension settled, each pulse of the fog tightening around him. Beyond that curtain lingered the reality he feared, and behind it, the stories untold. Would he rejoin his family's legacy, or dare to carve out his own path? "Ben." Sarah's voice echoed one last time, laced with terror. "You have to decide now." As the creature loomed closer, the shadows thickened once more, and Ben tasted the sharp bite of destiny hovering right at the brink. Would he dig deeper into the truth and risk everything, or would he flee from the pull of the past into the uncertain unknown? And then everything went still. A single shadow stepped forward, pulling back its hood to reveal a face he recognized but never understood. "Welcome to your family's history," they breathed, and his mind spun with horror, realization crashing in like a tidal wave. What legacy awaited him within the shadows? The figure stepped into the dim light, a face carved from the very shadows surrounding them. It was old, yet eerily familiar, both unsettling and achingly close. Ben's breath hitched. Recognition ignited a raw, unfiltered panic within him. You're one of them," he stammered, struggling to maintain coherence under the weight of shock. A twisted smile surged on the apparition's lips. "Indeed, I am called Alden, heir to this cursed legacy. And you, dear Ben, are next in line." The fog hissed, as if mocking his dawning horror. He could feel Sarah's presence still out there, a flicker of light against this encroaching darkness. "You're not going to take me," he managed to say, the tremor in his voice betraying his bravado. Alden stepped closer, the shadows curling around his feet like hungry serpents. "You don't quite understand, do you? This isn't about taking you. It's about awakening what's always been there. The question is, will you embrace it, or will you let it consume you in ignorance?" Ben backpedaled, heart racing like a caged animal, every instinct screaming to escape. "I want to join your darkness," he shouted, but doubt wormed its way into his mind. Memories of the cabin flickered, rattling floorboards, whispers trailing him through hallways, that hidden room he could never find. "I don't know what you want from me." Alden only chuckled, the sound low and taunting, echoing in the mist. "Simple, really. The bloodline runs deep. You've always known the truth. The sacrifices made, the price paid to keep the demons at bay. You can still walk away, but the cost will be steep." Suddenly, the ground quaked beneath them, and the silence shattered like glass. Bursting forth from the fog, memories took form, images of twisted rituals, firelight flickering against wild, desperate faces. A feeling of despair clawed up Ben's throat. "These are not my truths," he yelled, grasping at his sanity. These are your lies. Oh, dear Ben, Alden's voice dripped with venomous affection. These lies are the very fabric of your being. Each generation, the shadows beckon, and each generation, a choice must be made. Will you invoke the power within or let it fade away? Time is running out. Sarah's voice echoed in his mind, urging him to remember the safety they had found together as children, a sister's love against the world's terrors. You're wrong, he shouted, pushing through the oppressive air. Blood doesn't bind me to your horrors. With every ounce of strength, he reached into the depths of himself, searching for the remnants of hope and courage. I refuse to let fear dictate my fate. The words rang out, a proclamation against the gathering storm that I end that moment. The shadows shifted and seemed to shy away from his declaration. Alden's expression morphed, irritation sparking in his eyes. A fight against your inheritance? Foolish. But perhaps a spark of defiance could be worked into the legacy. As the fog recoiled, an insistent whisper wove through the air. A distant call from Sarah, both a warning and an invitation. Ben, come back. We have to fight this together. The shadows lurked, swirling about him like a feral beast, waiting for a moment of hesitation. What would stay the hand of fate, defiance, or submission? Ben's heartbeat thudded louder, drowning out all reason. The confrontation with his family's past demanded clarity, but now the path twisted like a thorny vine, suffocating and constricted. I have to know the truth, Ben suddenly declared, breathless with fear but ignited with determination. I will face whatever it takes. Alden swirled away from him, a grotesque silhouette against the wailing fog. Then embrace the history you've been gifted, and remember you can still choose to be the author of your own tale. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently, as startling truths broke like tidal waves around him. A rift formed, revealing an unsettling landscape laden with remnants of the past, a graveyard of secrets and sacrifices, dark and sinister. Did he dare step into that unfathomable abyss? As the fog closed in tighter, time stopped. A question hung in the air, heavy with consequence. Would he chase the terrifying legacy that clutched at his veins, or would he summon the courage to turn away, reclaiming his destiny? In that harrowing silence, the shadows flickered, and the path lay poised for choices yet to come. How deeply had the roots of this dark lineage sunk into his very soul? The winds of fate howled, and Ben felt an invisible pull urging him deeper into his family's chilling history, and he knew there was no turning back now. What awaited him beyond the rift, the dormant truths, or a terrifying fate? Ben stood at the edge of the rift, his heart pounding like a drum. The ground trembled beneath him, the fog swirling with an urgency that felt alive, as if beckoning him to step forward. His eyes darted back to Alden, who lingered a mere shadow's breath away, a ghost of the past with a twisted grin. Will you gamble your future? Alden's voice slithered through the air, thick with malice. Your family's legacy is not a burden. It's a gift, one you simply refuse to see. A chill skittered up Ben's spine. This wasn't just about him anymore. What did he owe to a lineage steeped in blood and darkness? It would be easier to turn back, to flee into the obscurity of a normal life, but he felt the weight of Sarah's call tugging at his heart, a tether between them stitched by shared fears and whispered secrets. Drawing a shaky breath, he stepped closer to the rift. The air shimmered with visions, blurred faces from long ago, twisted trees clawing at the sky, each scene a whisper of the past. Memories screamed for acknowledgement, each more vivid, each more terrifying than the last. Not all shadows must consume you, dear Ben. Alden's tone shifted, sounding almost hopeful. You have the power to rewrite this narrative. Look closer. Do you not see yourself within these pages? Ben clenched his fists, every fiber of his being refusing to back down. I want to be your puppet. With those words, he plunged into the rift, the world erupting in a cacophony of light and shadow. The transition was jarring. The cold mist clutched at him like icy fingers, dragging him into visions both fearsome and vivid. He felt weightless, suspended in time and space. Then he landed, breathless and dazed, in a clearing that felt both familiar and foreign. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and decay, memories swirling around like a storm. Gnarled trees crouched in the distance, their branches like skeletal hands reaching for him. "Ben, you must see," came Sarah's voice again, sharper this time. The urgency resonated through the fog, wrapping around his heart like a lifeline. But where was she? The swirling mist parted, revealing fragmented glimpses of his childhood sun-drenched days spent in playful abandon, yet drifting shadows loomed ominously on the periphery. Always watching, waiting. Suddenly, a crack split the atmosphere, sharp as glass. One moment, a flash of laughter echoed through the air, and in the next, it morphed into a cry of pain. The sound sliced through Ben, igniting a sense of foreboding. "No!" he shouted against the turmoil, the shadows shifting violently as if in response to his anguish. Alden's laughter echoed in the distance, mocking, haunting. "You cannot escape what you were born into. It is delusion to believe otherwise." Ben staggered back, clutching his head, wrestling with visions that coiled around his thoughts, trappings of fear, betrayal, and despair. But from the darkest corners of his mind, a flicker of resilience ignited. "No," he called out defiantly. "I will not let this define me." In that declaration, the world rippled. The shadows began to sway, hesitating as if grappling with a choice, and for a fleeting moment, the darkness around them seemed less oppressive. "Choice is a powerful weapon, boy," Alden's voice thundered from the shadows, reverberating through the air like thunder before a storm. "Will you wield it, or will you surrender to fate?" Ben felt the swell of courage build within him, as memories of laughter and love mixed with shadows, creating balance amidst chaos. He stepped forward again, heart racing with renewed determination. "I choose my path." As the affirmation left his lips, a pulsing light ignited from the rift, enveloping him in warmth. It beckoned him closer, opening new possibilities, and the oppressive weight began to lift. But as he neared the light, a form materialized. Sarah, her eyes wide with fear. "Ben, you have to stop this. The truth, it's more twisted than you realize." The light flashed brighter, vibrant yet blinding, and Ben felt truth pressing against him, wrapping around like a vice. What secrets lay in? Wait, what horror had twisted their family's past? As his vision blurred, uncertainty gnawed at him. Was he ready to face whatever awaited, or would the darkness swallow him whole? The air crackled with the promise of revelation, and Ben knew the time was coming to confront the heart of the truth, whatever that meant. What lay buried beneath the surface, and would he emerge unscathed or shattered? Ben blinked as the light enveloped him, bright and hot, displacing the shadows that had clung to his spirit. The world cracked open like an egg, spilling a torrent of images and voices into his mind, the echoes of laughter, cries of terror, and whispered secrets, swirling until they crashed into clarity. He stood not just in a clearing but at the intersection of his family's legacy and his own destiny. The air shimmered with energy, each breath he took twisting him tighter into that past he couldn't escape. Above all, Sarah's voice anchored him, trembling yet filled with urgency, resonating deep within. "Ben," she called, emerging from the shadows as the mist receded. Her face was lit with concern, eyes wide and earnest. "You can't unravel what you don't understand. There's more at stake than just legacy." "This isn't about legacy anymore," Ben shouted, his heart racing as he stepped closer. "It's about finally confronting what our family has been running from for generations. What do we have to lose by unveiling the truth?" A flicker of fear passed over her features. "You have to realize sometimes truths can destroy." But as she spoke, Ben noticed her confidence trembling, as if the belief in that statement was slowly breaking apart. "I can't stand back and let fear dictate my life anymore." The darkness pooled around them, shifting with a life of its own, and he felt the resonance of history pulsing through the ground beneath his feet. He could sense the shadows watching and waiting, the legacy demanding attention with every breath he took. "Then face it together," Sarah said, her voice little more than a whisper, filled with both vulnerability and strength. For a fleeting moment, Ben felt her warmth wash over him, like the sunlight that used to drench their childhood summers. "Let us pull back the veil once and for all. Together." He extended his hand, heart racing as the pulsating shadows shifted across the ground, the air buzzing with tension. Shadows shimmered as he grasped her hand, a lifeline pulling him into uncertain waters. In that moment of connection, the fog began to recede, as if acknowledging their unity. The air hummed with electric energy, binding them with an anchor that held against the rising tide of darkness. Look, Sarah pointed toward the rift, where images flickered to life, rituals held under the pale moon, faces contorted in fear, every cramped heartbeat a reminder of their history. He could almost hear the echoes of the banished ancestors, echoes of sacrifice and pain woven into the fabric of their lineage. Those are the moments that haunt us, Ben murmured, staring as shadows twisted into familiar faces. But they don't need to own us. The shadows writhed, pulsing like a heartbeat, showing him scenes meant to terrify, to bind but also, perhaps, to enlighten. Take this together, he urged as he felt warmth suffusing their connection, binding their fears into courage. If we embrace this, we can change it. Then let us rewrite it, Sarah replied, squeezing his hand, so that it doesn't consume us. As they stepped toward the rift, the darkness coiled tighter, but the shadows quivered, as if sensing the shift. The growling beast that loomed beyond the veil stilled, its eyes narrowing. Its hunger still flickered in the air, but it seemed different now, unsettled, almost hesitant. Embrace your truths, the beast growled, voice low and thick, and discover if you can withstand the weight of all your ancestors. They whisper and wail, urging for release. What will it be, Ben? Ben's heart thundered as he gripped Sarah's hand tighter, breaths mingling as they stepped through the shimmering rift. Here, in this place of shadows and light, he could sense change rippling through their world, the potential to end a curse or be consumed by it. Together, he whispered, and in that moment, everything around them shifted, resonating with the pulse of lineage and courage. They tore through the fabric of the past, confronting the legacy that twisted through the very core of their beings and illuminated the path to their future. Suddenly, the fog lifted, revealing sunlight pouring over a vast landscape, filled with the promise of hope. The shadows scattered like leaves caught in a breeze, retreating into the corners, the weight of history lifting from their shoulders. We did it, Sarah breathed, a bright smile overtaking her features, reflecting the joy that burst in Ben's chest. We fought it together. But as they stared into the unblemished horizon, Ben felt a faint tremor, a whisper lingering in the air that reminded him. The past cannot be erased, but it can be transformed. With a newfound resolve, Ben turned toward Sarah. We have the chance to reclaim our family's legacy. One without fear, one filled with light. Together, we'll forge a path for those who follow. As brighter days dawned ahead, they held each other tightly, bracing for whatever challenges life would throw at them. The lingering shadows transformed into sources of strength, no longer binding them but standing testament to a past that would never again determine their futures. The cabin in the Rockies stood silent behind them, a sentinel of old scars and haunting memories. But its power was now diminished, and as they turned their backs, Ben finally felt free. Now, anticipating a bright tomorrow, Ben felt his heart swell with purpose. You need to subscribe now to catch the next chapter of this explosive journey. Smash that like button if you want more stories filled with courage and transformation. Don't keep your friends in the dark about this. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories, and do not wait even one more second to share this thrilling conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to see how the past can change our futures.